Welcome back, subscribers. This one is going to be Novel Ideas 2, right? Dog Days of Summer, Novel Ideas 2. So it's the second, and it's just going to kind of give the background on what I was kind of talking about as far as how to keep more money in your pocket. There's going to be things that are be changing in the existing system that are going to penalize us for energy consumption, right? Not that you're not going to have it. Maybe in some areas you're going to have like these brownouts, or we just don't have the electricity. We got some bullshit thing from I'm in the Raleigh Durham area, and we got this thing that came across like Facebook that said we had a stretch of like 100-degree days. It's like last week here, so it's July the 20th, 2026. It's like, yeah, hey, just set your thermostat to what was it, 78, 79 degrees, and just to make sure that everybody has enough electricity and da 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 da. And I'm like, what? Be like, I woke up. I was thinking about this, and was thinking about doing these videos, and I was like, can you imagine another business? I mean, Duke Energy's and all these energy providers. They're in the business of selling you energy, and they're like, hey, don't use anymore. Like, are you shitting me? Like, what? Be like like it's supposed to be available. Like if you do service and it's not available, like what kind of business is that? We're going to curve you and tell you we can't have it. Well, build another power plant. I don't know, make everything more efficient. And so when you start getting into the efficiency world, when you get to yourself to the point where you're always trying to make things a little bit more efficient. Once you get an understanding of how things work, you then get to this point where you're like, okay, let's make it so that we don't have to spend as much money to keep the thing going, right? And that's it's an entrepreneurial aspect, and everybody does it. Whether it's like, gas station they drive to every day at work, and they're like, oh, it's a penny cheaper if I go across the street, shit like that. Whatever, it doesn't matter what it is. Or, oh, I got a coupon. I'm gonna buy 5 Arby's roast beef sandwiches because I've got a coupon, and it's whatever it is. You know what I mean? It's funny. I just pull that one up because when I was in high school, they were $1. It was $1 for a roast beef sandwich. It was because the deal that they had was it was called 5 for 5, like 5 Arby's roast beef sandwiches for $5. I told my son about that. He's like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, they weren't these little bullshit things like they have now." I said they were like sandwiches. He's like, "Yeah." He's like, I would eat 5 at a time. Like I get like a sack of sandwiches and just like go to town on it. Loved it. Say McDonald's, the big sandwiches like a quarter pounder. You could get them for $1. A Whopper at Burger King was $1. They had like their before the dollar menu. They had the big sandwiches for $1. And back then, it was good. It was really good. Still bad for you, but you know what I mean. Like if you're comparing it to now, like I don't touch that shit for like probably 20 years, really. 15 for sure, getting close to 20. Yeah, it's funny. In getting into this, it just popped into my head. The last time I got a Big Mac, because I was singing the song to my kids, because I grew up on Ronald McDonald and shit, and Birdie, and Grimace. And I was singing the song, to all beef patty, such a sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun, that thing. So I was singing to them, and they're like, "What the hell is that?" Well, they were little; they didn't say what the hell, but it was just like I was like, "Oh, it's a Big Mac." I said, "That's what's on the sandwich." It was a song that they sang. So I ended up getting a Big Mac. I was like, "This is terrible." Sorry, McDonald's. At any rate, this is about keeping money in your pocket. All right, because as what's going to happen is 2028, we're going to be like, it's somewhere in this range where we're going to hit like critical mass on digital identification worldwide. And the reason why they're doing this is because they want to track everything. They're going like full accountant mode on every freaking thing you're doing. So it is kind of Big Brother, but it's more on consumption of, I've heard some stories of reasons why, and it actually is a protection. It's not because there's only so much to go around. Be like, no, there's plenty. Be like, not like what people think. The reasons why the food like at McDonald's isn't so great is because everything is like, it's too much, and it's causing the nutrients in the soils and things wherever they're harvesting, whether it's the animals eating it, or the consumption of the animals, or the vegetables, any of the food stuffs that we eat. It doesn't have the nutritional value anymore because of the mass produced in farming, and all the soils are depleted, so it's this big circle of life thing. So whether it's the feed that the animals are eating or whatever it is, it's that stuff needs to be like reduced, and managed better, because there's a shit ton. If anybody's ever been in the restaurant business or knows of it, such a waste. So anyway, if there's ways to be able to collect the data and have a more efficient system, not necessarily a totalitarian restrict everything and, turn it into a big giant national gulag, that at least there's two versions of that, but again, if you have the money and the resources, it's not going to matter. Like a couple of weeks ago, I was at the butcher shop, and they had ribeye steaks, and they were like $25 a pound or something like that. I mean, it was 27. It was like kind of high. It's like, that's kind of a lot of money for a steak. Thinking, you need a pound steak? Well, no, but it just sounds like a lot of money. If it's a half of a pound, right? Because you're getting bone and all that other stuff. So you would buy, like, if you bought a pound, like say it's a T-bone, right? Most of it's bone. You're paying for the bone. So the New York strip price would be higher because there's no bone in it. Anyway, it's about efficiency and paying attention to, like, as things start running up. So they have this digital identification. Things are running up. They're going to be tracking all this shit. And then the energy consumption is going to be like a slap you on the wrist type of thing. It's like, we're just going to charge you more money for it. Just like they do with fuel. Be like, maybe they'll drive less if we just charge them more money. My friend D that's in England, I was asking her about energy pricing and stuff they have in Europe, in England, and it's not really Europe, it's England. And she's like, it's totally mental. She did the conversion real quick. It was like $10, $11 a gallon for fuel. And I was like, yeah, but you don't drive as much as we drive here. I said, that's the difference. I said, in the States, we might only be paying $3.50 or $4, whatever, a gallon. I say, but we're driving way more because the country is way bigger. So it's all relative. I said, like, on a daily basis, I'm like constantly driving. I told her, I said, I'm driving 100 miles a day, just driving around doing my thing. And she's like, oh, she's like, yeah. I was like, yeah. I say it's a lot more just for transportation in the United States. So they can't, it's all relative. We might be burning more, but our consumption is way, way higher. I said, so it's about the same. So your unit cost to get you where you need to go. There, everything is all consolidated. You could ride a bike if you wanted to, right? Whatever. So we're going to talk about this extension on heating, air conditioning, and trying to devise a plan. And that's what I'm working on right now. I already have most of it. Is set up a system where you can take existing properties, and whether or not you're renting them, you own them, you live in them, XYZ, whatever, that you would decrease your energy consumption rate on your heating and cooling, and probably water heating. I haven't got into that yet, but that's just going to be part of it. But that's not much. It's like $20 to $50 a month, depending upon how crazy you are with your hot water. It's not very much money, but heating and cooling, I did it in the last video. I think the consumption rate, and this is also including on actual machinery, like wear and tear on machinery, because you have to replace it now. It's like 10 to 15 years of what it used to be, but that number's getting less because the equipment isn't lasting as long. So it's the numbers that we're getting are the equipment is change outs running from $10,000 to $20,000 for a change out in our area, depending upon how big the system is, how elaborate the system is. Just a single 2-ton unit. I was just in a subdivision last week, and I saw 2 heating air conditioning techs that were doing equipment, and in a subdivision that was new, and that's what was really surprising to me, and that's why I got out of the car and I asked them, like, hey, can I ask you a quick question? Yeah, I was like, how old's that unit? And they're like, oh, this is 5 years old. I was like, 5 years old? What the hell is going on? Are they upgrading? No, it's broken. I'm like, what? And the manufacturer that they said, they're like, well, yeah, this particular manufacturer, that's junk. Like, so we're going back with this one, right? So, be like, what are those manufacturers? All right, the one that's junk starts with an N, let's see, starts with an L, ends with an X, and the one that they're replacing it with is kind of like a locomotive. That's fun. I'm not gonna say the name, but anyway, but I can't vouch for them, so it's like, don't take my word for it. It's just what these guys are saying, to me. So anyway, I'm like, how much is? I said, what's breaking on it? They tell me, and they said, yeah, the control boards and the coil outside was leaking, And he said it's $4,000 to $5,000 to repair it, and people just say like, "Oh, what's a new system? 10 grand. I'll just switch it out." And that's a single 2-ton unit, small little property, small houses. So depending upon the size, the capacity that you need, you might need multiple units, split systems, and that's where the expense goes up. We had a friend that just had theirs changed out, was $18,000, and it wasn't. It's just kind of an average house. So 15 grand on an average house, and we have 15 to 20. So when you start extrapolating it out, and then that equipment lasting, if you put it out like say 10 years, and that would cover also generalized maintenance that you have to do on it, because even on my house, my equipment's like was good equipment when I put it in, no issues as far as like the best stuff that I could get at the time for money wise. We still have maintenance, and I've calculated it's probably I've spent probably $3,000 in 8 years ultimately, and just service calls and maintenance and things like that. If equipment's not running, there's been control boards that have broken and things like that. So, and I know my heating air conditioning guys, they're from friends with them. So I just know the industry really, really well. So it's expensive. So what does that boil down to? Oh, it's about, with your electric bill, it's costing me about $350 a month. I would say close to 400. Let's say $400 on today's money to heat and cool my house and buy equipment and stay comfy. $400 a month. It's like car payment. Like, that's kind of expensive. So what this system does is it reduces the cost of that by the numbers I have is as high as about 87%, and the longevity of it is decades. It uses the controls to use it to run this all is very, 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 very simple. And that's why I said I need to build this very, very simple, create a system. So it's a chilled water system, and then it's kind of a geothermal hybrid system. But it's using existing equipment, but we're just doing it a little bit differently. And because I have background in a couple other areas, and that's what I'm going to show you right now of what that is. And I'll divulge some of it, but really what I think we're going to get back into doing is not necessarily with Reservoir, but with my other company. And I'll put it out there is like, I can do this nationally. I can do this internationally, like consulting of like, what do you actually really need? And not a lot of people do this. So I'm just going to go ahead and show this really quick and expand the screen and show you. So this software is called Elite, is the manufacturer. It's called RHVAC. And they make these, let's see if I can make this bigger. I can't make it any bigger. Sorry, you're going to have to zoom in on it. If you're on your phone, you're just going to have to take my word for it. But anyway, the numbers are all here. So this is the program, and you put in the rooms, like what the room sizes and dimensions are. So I'm going to have to move this over this way and kind of side saddle my face here a little bit, because in order to be able to make this work, I have to have it on my main screen. Maybe I can just, let's see if I can do it like this. Oh, I'll do it like that. Perfect. Nice. Okay. So you don't see the screen. All right. Well, I'll just flip back and forth. Essentially, what this is it's identifying how many BTUs I need for heating and cooling. And I go through each one of the rooms, and I can designate like say the sunroom, for example. The sunroom has an area of like 2,262 feet. It has a sensible gain and a latent gain. I need that's for the whole zone. The sunroom's 224 square feet, and it has I need 963 BTUs of energy, basically, to heat it at my design parameter. And be like, well, what does that mean? It means that when I set the design parameter, I can set the design conditions. So the design conditions are 72 degrees indoor, outdoor, Raleigh, Durham. I mean, I can set this to anywhere. It gives you I could put any state, any country, anything, and it gives you the latitude, longitudinal area, and the high to low temperatures, like the average temperatures inside of a database, and it spits it out. And I can go in and change that. Like if somebody says, like they would do this in the past and say, I want my house to be, I had one guy, he's like, I want 69 degrees in my house. I'm like, okay, you freak, whatever. You slut. 69 degrees, and when it hits 100 degrees outside. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. So I put that in there. I'm like, you realize that that's only going to be like, the average is like a couple of days a year we hit that number on a 10-year average, you know? Like you want me, that's what these people don't understand. You want me to oversize it. You want me to put Ferrari type energy on 2 days out of the year, and the other 363, the system's going to run like shit. I'm like, you understand that, right? Because the systems don't have, unless you spent a ton of money, they didn't have variable speed. You couldn't go from like high to low. It didn't have that ability. So heating air conditioning systems on houses, they run like wide open or off. That's it. So it doesn't give a shit if it's 75 outside or 105. It's going to run the same. It's the energy consumption and how long it runs. This much cooling, this many BTUs it puts out, blast it at you, and it comes out. It's not like your car where you could turn like, you know, temperature and the actual blowing, you know, how hard it's blowing on you. You can't do that. So that's the major efficiency problem. Then not to mention, whenever it gets really hot outside, the equipment, it goes it's out to lunch. It's at least 50% less efficient. So every dollar you put in, you get about 50 cents back out of it. It's garbage. So we come back in, we set the design parameters. Then I come in and I set up like, I'll show you this real quick. I can go room by room. Okay, this is like my great room. All right, come on screen. I just can't save it. I didn't have it set up right. So inside my great room, I can't make it bigger. I've set, is there floor material? Does there have insulation? This one actually does have insulation. And the insulation is set with, I pick it and it sets all the U values up. It sets like, okay, it's, okay, this is set up as a sealed crawl space, passive, no floor insulation. But I already know the U numbers of this. I've already done all the engineering on this because this is what I used to do in my business. So this isn't speculative at all. I mean, multi-million dollars of business that ran through, you know, me doing this. Not necessarily, the calculations were part of it, but it was big time business. So at any rate, it identifies exactly to a T. Now, like here, like wall assembly is the walls roof up. So next one would be this particular room doesn't have any walls on it because it's a great room, like over a garage. It doesn't have any walls on it. But if I come over here and I switch it to, let's say a bedroom, let's see. Yeah. Okay. Here's one here. So this is the dining room. The dining room has one single exterior wall on it. And it faces north. So here it is right here. Here's the wall assembly. Wall assembly is designated as the R value, I've got R11 in the stud cavity, So whatever. I've already set these U value numbers based upon the house. And it's also facing north. So right here, the designation, you can decide whether or not it's going to be north, south, east, or west. Or to specifically, it could be north, northwest, southwest, whatever, northeast. You get it. So you can change all those design parameters. It's very, very, very specific. So when you're all done with it, it spits out total numbers of BTUs exactly for each room, exactly what you're going to need for on a T, whatever the design parameters on the outside at the peak. And that's where the problem comes in. So, but that's how you have to design the equipment. That's how they do it. And they come in and they say like, well, if it's at peak, what happens if I don't need the peak? What happens then? Well, you're kind of screwed. That means that you're just throwing money out. And what happens is the unit will turn on for like 5 minutes or 3 minutes and shut off. And that's called short cycling. That kills your equipment. That's why a lot of times it breaks. If you just let it run like a freight train, it's great. It runs great. So, but you can't because it'll make it so you have to hang meat in your house. Like, so unless you're some serial killer freak that has to have your house super cold because you're hanging bodies in the living room, okay, that's not realistic. So you need to have something that allows for this modulation to occur inside of a house. And that's where it comes in. That's what we're doing. So this ice chiller system allows for this modulation to occur where we can store the energy, run it like a really slow freight train. Like the analogy that I gave was like the Mercedes-Benz diesel electric that gets 170 miles a gallon. And it's basically like a freight train principle. right? Diesel electric. The diesel runs really low and slow, high torque, super efficient, right in the perfect energy band, but then it makes electricity. See? So that's essentially what I'm doing inside of your heating and air conditioning system at the house. And selling them commercial. Oh, this sounds great. Can you come to my house and build it? And be like, well, we could help design it. That's the thing, is I could help design it, because every property, it's basically like you're a doctor. Like I would go into these houses on these remodels, and I'd have to take a look at the whole house and say like, all right, well, let's run the load calculation, see what it actually really needs. I need blower door testing to find out how leaky the house is. And then after I have that, then I can start making recommendations and things that we can do. And then I look at your property and say like, well, what can we do with the property? Does it have a crawl space? Does it have a basement? Is it on a slab? How large is the roof assembly? There's a lot of factors that come involved in it. And we just had so many people that were knocking on the door to have this done that I didn't think anything of it at the time. At the time, I was like, I started doing it like when I was around 26 or 7 years old, and learned more and more and more. By the time I was like 32, I was very, very proficient at it, and we had enough properties that were in the ground and see how they worked. And then my partner, because we were making money hand over fist, my partner just turned into a sack of shit, and I had to get away from him. So I stopped, and that was about 20 years ago. And I ended up buying another company, and I did that for 20 years. So I basically kind of went on hiatus, but I'm actually accredited in this field with a company called Advanced Energy that's out of Raleigh, North Carolina, Advanced Energy. And I knew back then the president, his name was Bob Koger. I worked on his house. I did his load calculation. They had energy grants from Department of Energy and Oak Ridge National Laboratories, and projects that my company worked on that I'm like in a published book, like identifying like this guy knows his shit. So we got paid through Advanced Energy. So so I was rubbing elbows with like the top elite people that were inside of this space, and it come to find out that I was the expert that came to this particular type of engineering, because and I learned it from an engineer that was in South Carolina. His name was Dr. Craig DeWitt, and he used to run our load calculations originally for the houses that we were building when we first started doing spray foam. And then we got into a pinch on a weekend, and I would just send him the plans. I'd have to like send him the plans. He'd do this load calculation on this software, and he went on like vacation. I got this call from this builder, and we were building a house for John McConnell. I wasn't doing it. The builder was. McConnell Golf in Raleigh. You can look it up. Big time guy. The house is mapped out at about 30,000 square feet. Mansion, real mansion, not a 10,000 square footer McMansion. I'm talking mansion, Scarface mansion type of shit. Huge estate. 30,000 relative under the roof, 30,000 square feet, but there are all these vaults, absolutely beautiful. And I get this call from the builder, and Mike's like, "Hey, can you put together a quote on this house?" And I went and I picked them up. Like I remember picking the drawings up, and it was this like huge, like commercial size set of drawings for this house. And he's like, "Can you do a load calculation and estimate on like how much heating, air conditioning we actually need in the house?" I'm like, and I'm like, "When do you need it by?" It was like he's like, "Oh, Monday." It was Friday afternoon. I was like, so I ended up calling my guy down in Florida or South Carolina, and I said, "Hey," I had guys like all over the whole country that I was working with, and because nobody was really doing this. And I said, "Hey, can you run this?" He's like, "Oh no, I can't. I couldn't get the drawings to him fast enough, right?" And he's like, "Well, you can just buy the software and you'll be able to like kind of reverse engineer it and do it yourself." He said, "It's not that complicated. You just have to make sure that you do." He basically gave me the secret sauce of what he was doing in it, because I wasn't trained on the software, but I knew it enough, and I had all the like the stuff I was showing you. I had those reports that he would send to me. So I basically kind of reverse engineered it over the weekend and just spent a ton of time on it and got the estimate back to him. And it was just an idea of where it was. And I went back and kind of fine tuned it afterwards. But got it pretty close, pretty close. And, but I had the secret sauce by this guy who was an engineer. He's I don't know what he had his doctorate in. He wasn't an MD or anything like that, but he's I don't know, like thermodynamics or something like that, whatever, like that type of level guy. All right, and I got his number through one of the spray foam companies. It's like, oh, you need to talk to this guy. This guy's got his shit together, and that's how I got married up to it and learned about it. So each guy along the way that I would run into was usually always like, I don't know, divine intervention or something like that, and then my own drive to get further into understanding how something worked. And because ultimately, as a general contractor in North Carolina, we were responsible for it. So if I'm doing something, like, I'm technically liable. So if I fuck up a house, like, I'm responsible for it. So I needed to know, and that's why my partner he wasn't the licensed guy. Our company was licensed, but I was the one that took the test. So I was the guy that was responsible, not technically him. So I was driving to try to figure out exactly like how this all worked, and basically reverse engineered it, and then started doing it, and then started using it as a technique basically to sell these jobs. And because I needed to create a moat in our business so that nobody else could do what we were doing. Like, it was highly specialized, and that's what I was selling. And it really was. Because other people out there would just say they're doing spray foam or other insulation packages, but they weren't doing any of these load calculations, these manual J's. And heating and air conditioning guys, they didn't even have this software. So this is very specific. They kind of have a rule of thumb that they use in the heating and air conditioning world, which is very, very loose. But when you start really figuring out the efficiency, you need to really turn over every stone to make sure, like, there's going to be a difference if you have like one wall that's facing south and it's like there's no windows in it, or if I take that same house and I rotate it 180 degrees and it just so happens that it's on the other side of the wall that's all full glass, and be like, well, in the summertime, that's going to get really freaking hot and burn a hole in the floor because of the sun, So that's essentially what it does. And I said I could take exactly the same house and just rotate it globally, whatever, 25 degrees or whatever, just to get, because I would go out and, well, now we have Google. Back then we didn't even have Google. So I take a compass out, like old school, and like find out exactly where north was on the house and all those specifics, like how many windows there are, there's crawl space, basement, etc., all that stuff. So anyway, that all comes into play. And what I do is I had those numbers. So I had those BTU numbers. I plug them back in and say, I want to run this water-cooled chilled system. Is it doable based upon this? So I ended up essentially designing refrigeration system that would run and handle this amount of BTUs that I need. So I'm doing it on just the second floor of my house right now. And I'm going to, the stuff is like, I've got most of the stuff here, so I just have to kind of put it together, and the refrigeration system. So probably by the end of the month, I'll probably have all that up and running, and I'll be able to have, like real testing. So I'm not a refrigeration expert. Again, my neighbor, a couple of my guys that I know, HVAC guys, they're like, yeah, I can kind of walk you through it. But it's actually like designing it through Ezra, my AI, through Claude, how to put the system together, because it's like I'm basically designing the refrigeration system, which is just only part of it, but it has to operate in a specific design parameter. So it's going to run from 40 degrees down to like negative 10 degrees. So it's a pretty large window. It's not like regular outdoor equipment that runs at like, down to, I think, a minimum. I think could run down to 35 degrees or something like that. But the refrigerants don't get that cold. It just doesn't allow for that because it'll freeze and not work. So that's another issue that you have. So there's a lot of very complex elements that come into play relating back to thermodynamics, but I can prove it through the science and the building science and all the experience. So where does that leave you? Millie's like, well, just stay tuned, because like the dog days of summer, this is just kind of what I do, is like, the crypto business right now is, the old, 4-year cycle coming into play, and we think it's going to go down maybe to around the 50 range. So we're just kind of waiting it out. We're expecting there to be kind of like this kind of major market correction, and, have some reason to roll out this digital ID, start tracking up your ass. We're going to be, making you accountable for all the shit. You're going to want to live in a cave in the mountains. I'm like, no. We're just going to use a lot less, and we're going to play their little game, but we're going to engineer better. We're going to just make a better system, and so that I can still have comfort and live my life and play their game and just not use as much, right? Not a big deal. That's fine with me. Be like, I'll just roll on. Fine with me. I'm grateful. Be like, if I have electricity and I can do my business every day and I don't have to worry about solar and do all this, people don't talk about the maintenance. Be like, oh, I'm off grid. Be like, yeah, well, you're fucking working all damn day just to make sure the whole thing all works. Oh, no, it's easy. Be like, yeah, because it's brand new probably. Oh, no, for 10 years. Well, if you don't have anything else going on in your life, then you'll have time to deal with that. And when it breaks, it's on you. And if it breaks, who are you going to call to fix it? So you cannot commercialize that. That means that you can't put that on your rental properties, etc., because you're going to have to train people to specifically know how to put it together. The system that I'm doing, I already have that in mind. I'm like, I need to have this where it's repeatable, where I can make modular systems that I can, if I need 1 ton, 2 tons, 3 tons of capacity, I can just scale it up. I need this much capacity in the chiller. I know how many BTUs are chilled from a delta of 70 degrees down to negative 10 degrees of however much the water mass is. I mean, I have all of these. I've already done all the math and through the AI and kept all these basically to design the system I have and then run it. Now it's the point of just assembling it, running it, and then seeing how it performs against AI. In my collaboration in the engineering. So it's my idea, but it's me collaborating across a number of different systems that are in existing houses and incorporating them. That's all I'm really doing. And I'm pretty excited about that. I'm pretty confident. I'm not so confident on the refrigeration side. I've asked tons of questions on it, and the way I'm doing it is very, very simple. It doesn't need to get it to run. I don't have to have ultra efficiency out of the actual refrigeration system because I have redundancy on every single element of this system, whether it's the airflow. My system is going to run basically like a car. I'm going to be able to modulate airflow, how much air I'm going to have come out. That's going to be variable speed, temperature controlled. I'm going to have modulation of how cold the liquid is going to be, the refrigeration. And then also, but the refrigeration side, this is another one. I can run this thing 24 hours a day, but I can store energy. This is the kicker. And this, most energy providers, I'm going to leave you with this, a part of the energy efficiency element of this. And I don't really have a way to calculate this other than I know from Duke Energy of how much more efficient it is to run it this way. So you have peak hours and you have off-peak hours. Peak hours are, say, I don't know what it is. I should just look it up really quick, just to kind of see, because I asked it before and it has it inside it. What are peak and off-peak hours for Duke Energy? Peak hours when rates are highest apply to specific weekly day blocks. Off-peak times offer cheaper rates covering all hours and weekends. So basically, I'm designing the system to run on a 24-hour clip, all right? Knowing this. Your current equipment that you have in your house is on demand. It's cold, turn on. It's hot, or it's hot, it's turned on, it's off, vice versa. Same thing with heat. Same exact thing. But that isn't any good during the day. And then Duke Energy will be like, hey, can you turn your thermostat up to 78? And be like, no. How about no? But if I'm using less, or they decide to cut out and brown out, and I could run this I could run it off of solar panels because I'm running less than 1,000 watts for the whole system. I'm running more like potentially 350 watts on a half-ton system. And the reason why is because it's a low and slow. Okay, so you can see this. Like I have a cascade effect, essentially. Instead of one big unit, I have multiple smaller units. Okay, and they all work. Like if I need extra cooling, okay, I'll get all 3. If I don't need that cooling, I'll have 2. If I don't need the cooling, I'll have 1. And then 1 just runs and runs and runs and runs and stores the battery capacity, which is in the water. Peak hours, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. That's on peak, all right? Off peak, okay, is that's summertime conditions. So some areas apply 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. So that's about what it is. And then the rates. What are Duke Energy's rates, peak or off peak? All right. So here's where the big savings is. So if you could run this hog off peak and store and run your battery, which is not lithium ion, that's going to catch your house on fire, which is super expensive, that you're not going to be able to get rid of in 5 to 10 years, and you dump all this energy, which is 70% or 60, 70% of your total energy costs of your house or building, and you dump it into water, chill like ethylene, propylene glycol, which is safe. If you dump it into that, then that's very sustainable. Okay. The highest price per kilowatt hour and peak demands. Let's see here. 6.9. You're looking at about 22 cents a kilowatt hour. Discount hour is the cheapest. 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. 7 cents a kilowatt hour. All right. So what's that a difference of? The percentage savings on that. If you were able to run it at that time, I'm going to ask another question because I'm just kind of interested. What is the percentage savings from 22 cents a kilowatt hour to 7 cents a kilowatt hour on percentage? And this is where the AIs are absolutely fantastic. And it does all the math for you. Here's all the physics, the math, boom, 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 boom. And that's what I've been doing with my system. So, because I can run in all these like real math problems, and it knows the physics. It understands the equations. But I'm listening, and I don't necessarily know the formula, but I know the numbers, and it's like da 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 da. Boop. Here's your BTUs. Here's this. There's da 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 da. Right. So, 68%. Actually, it's 68.18%. So it's almost 70% just on energy consumption. That's not where I'm actually getting my energy consumption. The consumption is actually how these systems running, because I'm at like peak efficiency while it's running. Period. Because all the shit's inside. And I can charge the system off peak hours and charge my battery really cheap at 70% rate cut. So like you're taking advantage of that energy rate arbitrage. And it's also an incentive for Duke to be like, hey, yeah, like we'll sell you the energy dirt cheap, because nobody's really using it at that time. Be like, oh, well, Danny's going to use it and his company's going to be using it because we can set up our houses so that it runs on this. So like when you start equating this, and if I can charge the battery, so at peak time, if I have my 3 compressor cascade, and what I do is like at peak when it's really hot, they may all run. When it gets later at night, what'll happen, I can set them to a timer. So what'll happen is that whenever I hit, what time is it? 6 p.m. I think it just said it was at night. It was like early. Summer season. It says 6 to 9. So off peak. Okay. 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. I can set the timer on all of them, and they will all refrigerate and work, which will then charge the battery for the day. So now that's a major game changer. Do you see what I mean? So what this enables you to do is it takes the existing system and it allows you to toggle between battery consumption storage, which is like how much water chest I have, opposed to how long I want to slowly churn to run the power on the system. So it's basically like a solar panel, only you're using it opposite, and the energy that you're using is Duke energy. You see, it's the same relative principle, but it's a lot cheaper because you're inconsistent, because you're just plugging it in. You're not having to do, oh, it's an overcast day today, it doesn't really work. Be like, my ass, I can plug this shit in 365, 7 days a week. It's always going to be the same exact thing. Like, it's just low and slow. Let me collect my rent and be done with it. So anyway, that's the principles behind this system, and I've been rambling for long on this, but we're pretty excited about it. So again, there's an efficiency cascade that's not just running it indoors. It's not just the Duke energy. There's an efficiency cascade across the entire board of how the whole thing runs and works. And I have it itemized, but I don't really know. I'm going to have to basically just run the system and then see what my bills are, of what the consumption rate is. But again, it's going to be very difficult to log that because you have so many dynamic factors that are involved, because you have the outdoor temperatures are changing, the pressures outside are changing, the humidity is changing. So all those come into play, and that is a dynamic variance that happens. If somebody said like, oh, it's simple, just figure it out, be like, they don't understand the load calculation side. And we have found inside of the load calculation software that in general, there's something that's embedded in it. And the more that I kept thinking, like, if I took like the total BTUs a house needs for 24 hours, and then I said, like, well, my ice system can run 24 hours a day. I need the total number, and then I need the hourly BTU requirement at peak. And it just so if it gets really hot, I can handle it. But after that, the system starts shutting down. And then I need to get, like, say I need 400,000 BTUs. I need to get to that number, when it's 6 a.m. I need to hit that number in my ice battery storage. So when it hits 6 a.m., we're cruising. You see? Champagne on a beer budget. You see? All you're doing is you're taking the same system, and we've engineered a cascading effect that takes advantage of this Duke arbitrage, more efficiency. I mean, there's so many things that we're covering on this. So anyway, there'll be more to come, and it's money. Again, you're talking $1,000. I just said it, I think earlier in maybe it was the other video I said, if I took on average, I'm looking at maybe across the board potentially $4,000 or $5,000, because this can also work on the heat side too. $4,000 or $5,000, and that's including equipment over a 10-year period, having to replace it, maintenance it, etc. Because it's very simple to run this thing. But you haven't run it yet, and be like, it basically is refrigerator or freezer compressors that are designed to run all the time with no fancy control board. No control board on the front of it to say, like, oh, you're low on milk and you need to go to the store. We'll run a running list, or no water and ice. Just runs the compressor. It just runs. It doesn't just shut. It just runs. No control board. It just does what I say it for it to do. That's where the efficiency comes in. So these systems, refrigerators, if you go house to house, they last 15, 20 years. They'll last and run. They'll just run. So that's what you're looking at as far as equipment. And those little tiny compressors, I spent $300 on one of them. And I got two to test this part of the system. So I've got the entire system of just the refrigeration system. I'm looking at about $500 with the refrigeration lines, the coax lines, and actually like design it and put it together. So about $500 a piece for one of these, and for it to last that long. No fancy control boards, no direct China bullshit. Like most of these parts are like Home Depot parts and shit, like supply houses, like things like that, like readily available, easy to fix. And but yeah, if you're talking $5,000 on average, $4,000 or $5,000, I mean, you're talking close to 10 properties. If you can have 10 properties, you're looking at $500,000 in 10 years. Easy. And it's, I said, everybody needs the heat, everybody needs the cooling, and everybody needs a roof over their head. It's kind of like, Dave Ramsey saying, like, well, you need the simple essentials. Nobody ever says heating and air conditioning. You need food, you need shelter, and you need clothing. And be like, well, shelter is not just rent. Shelter is also heating and cooling. So just add it as a fourth, because it's costing you probably on average with your equipment and all the energy you're consuming, probably about $400 to $500 a month. That's a pretty decent estimate. That's a really nice car payment, or imagine the vacations you could take, right? Be like, well, I can't leave the country because of the digital ID, and I'm not willing to take this inoculation. I get it. All right, so I'm going to cut you off here, cut myself off. And there'll be more to come. But yeah, this is pretty exciting stuff. And again, it's just a dog day project. It's just something that popped in my head. I'm like, I can do this. This is totally my wheelhouse. I'm an expert on this. I should just do it. Like, why not? What's going to happen? And I'm like, I'm only going to save like $100 a month, maybe a couple hundred. But I was like, yeah, but I got equipment. This whole back and forth. It's been a whole, yeah, it's been a fun project because I really dig the building science, and because I have proprietary knowledge in this space that I can fit it in here. I'm like, I know. But again, like, you could do this on the heat side. Imagine that, having like heat that you're paying like 80%, 70, 80% less than everybody else is. Okay, cheers.